Welcome to the Confident Grief Coach Show.
Hi, I am Pat Shevland, founder of the Confident Grief Coach School.
And I'm Cami Thielander, Advanced Certified Grief Coach and founder of Embodied Grief Support Coaching.
We believe as professionals, it is important to have a forum where we can gather as a community to really talk about all things body, mind, and spirit when it comes to grief.
We will be sharing stories, discussing thought-provoking ideas, and interviewing others who work in the field of grief and those who have the lived experience of creating lives of peace and purpose after experiencing deep loss.
Information about Cami's Embodied Grief Support Coaching Services or the Confident Grief Coach Certification Program can be found in our show notes below.
Thank you for joining us at the Confident Grief Coach Show. And if you like what you're hearing or would like us to focus on a specific topic in the future, please hit the like and subscribe button to stay connected.
Hey, Miss Cami.
Hello, Miss Pat. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited for today's conversation. You and I were just chatting off screen a little bit. Yesterday was Earth Day. I have a lot of earth. If people are in astrology and all that, I'm an earth dog. I have a lot of earth in my whatever. You know astrology better than I, but a lot of earth, some water. But it was interesting because you said, oh, let's talk about that because you are very passionate about Mother Earth and us caring for our earth and our sustainability and that type of thing. And so we'll go into that. But I wanted to share something with you because as I was driving yesterday, I've been listening to Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal book. And I have the regular copy in front of me. And it was just like he started talking about the healing properties of nature. And what are we always talking about here? Healing, right? And grief and healing and all that good stuff. So I'm just going to read a couple of things to you and then just share a little bit about the nature that was going on in our backyard this morning. But I thought this was profound and I just wanted to share it with you and have you speak to it a little bit. So he had Dr. Mate had interviewed, I think, these people, and one is the Canadian Olympic cyclist and skater Clara Hughes. And so just she was getting stuck in her 40s, had just had a wonderful career, became a speaker and a teacher and all that good stuff, like they do after they're done with their careers in the Olympics and that type of thing. But she said she let go of everything because she was just, I would assume, kind of getting burned out. He didn't say that, but what I'm reading is like she was burnt out, like not really sure where to go. So she gave up everything, her speaking gigs, all this kind of stuff, and just decided to start walking. So she spent about 6 months of each year in the last 3 years prior to him writing this book, walking. And what she said is, when I walk, there is no tomorrow. Yesterday is gone. There is only here now. I listen to the forest speak, the mountains, the water. I hear their voices. Trees become family. Rocks become living beings that you know and you're happy to see. Walking has also instilled in her a new sense of what it means to be resilient. Every single difficult thing that surfaces in whatever headspace that may come to me in my day, I can sit, I can write, I can draw, I can garden. So it was like nature played such a huge part to that. And then he talked about a Navajo activist, artist, and ceremonial leader, Pat McCabe, who's known as Woman Stands Shining. And she said, the first thing that comes to my heart, she told Dr. Mate, is that we have a commitment to Earth. It's not just a commitment, though. It's a mad love affair with this Earth. And we have a capacity and a role in helping her and all of the rest of the life to thrive. And she said, when you are part of that larger community, Earth, and you are accountable to this mad romance with birds and fish and trees and mountains and sky, you have more to compel you, to guide you. It's all about the resiliency of what we can have on the earth. And then I mentioned to you just a while ago, this morning we woke up. It's a full moon that's coming today, as we're recording this, even though this won't go out for a couple of days after. But we had 8 turkeys, wild turkeys, male and female, in the backyard, 4 deer, and then all of a sudden this coyote came and sat on the berm and kind of was watching them. So the deer raised their white flag tails and scampered off. The turkeys just kept doing their turkey thing. And the coyote just laid down and just was watching everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, to see all this interconnectedness of nature visually, and teaching my grandchildren about it. I mean, we were all watching just amazingly, was incredible. And I thought all this is messaging what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to throw it over to you, and I would just like you to really share about your passion, what you really believe we need to do, and the grief that you're feeling and that we know many others are feeling about what's happening on our earth.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for speaking to all of that. That just like those passages from the book just resonated with me because I'm that person that's like, I mean, walking in nature and just having that conversation with the trees and the wind and all the critters that we see. Like I very much feel that connection. And that's really where I think like my love and my passion for Earth really lies, is because I'm a feeler. I'm also an Earth sign. I'm a Taurus. So this is like my time of year. And I'm all about this connection with the earth, and I feel that connection so deeply. I have a Cancer moon, which means I have a very emotional feeling center inside of me. So paired with this earthiness, gives me this drive to like really tend to the land, kind of like how those passages were speaking to. So I definitely resonate with that and love when I see all the critters outside my window too. But what I really wanted to speak to, of course, with Earth Day coming up and grief and healing, and something that's been on my mind lately has been, I think for my generation, we grew up in this planet understanding that things are not well. You know, I grew up in class learning about pollution and all of the ways in which, you know, global warming and climate change and the ocean levels rising and how our agricultural systems are kind of destroying everything. So for me, it was very normal to like be taking in all of this information, yet the end still kind of seemed far away. Like we have, like I grew up on this understanding, like, okay, well, we really need to like learn how to better, more sustainably live on this planet if we want to, if the human race wants to be here in a healthy way. So that's always been the messaging that I've got from school. I went to an environmental high school as well, so it was all about all of this. And then I went on to college to study biology, and it was very much, here's the state of the world. Good luck. Have fun with it. You're all screwed. We're going to be dead though, so it doesn't matter. And now I'm left here like, okay, well, now what? So that's been on my mind my whole life. And I've always been outside loving the crap out of nature, just like, okay, well, love is the answer. I'm going to go out here and just spend time with earth and just love and heal myself and garden and tend to this relationship and this connection that I feel. So that's been consistent. And this week, I was listening to a podcast and heard a prediction that was really scary for me. And it kind of brought back all of this information that I've been taking in over the years of how our human relationship with the earth has turned into this unsustainable relationship. And that's bringing up a lot of grief for me. And this prediction was that in 60 years or so, our soil is going to be completely dead. Like we have about 60 harvest seasons left until there is no more harvest. And I just like sat with that. I was in the car and I stopped the podcast and I just sat with that and I was like, wow, like my whole life I've been hearing about all of this destruction and all of the ways in which we really need to start changing things. But the future of when exactly this, destruction was really going to happen still seems so far away,
Mhm.
even though we have this understanding that we're in the middle of it. But that prediction just really woke me up to the reality of the fact that within my lifetime, I'm in my generation, I'm experiencing this massive, I mean, we're in the middle of a mass extinction. Every day there's species that go extinct. Every day there's thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of acres of trees that are cut down. And these statistics become normal, and it's almost like, yeah, we know that the earth is plummeting, yet like what are we actually doing about it? And to hear that prediction of about 60 years to grow food woke me up to the fact that we are really in the middle of this right now. And what are we doing to actually do something about this?
Yeah.
And I look around in my community and I just have a very pessimistic lens of all the things that we're not doing to take care of our earth. Just this morning, I was looking outside of my window and there on a, I live in a condo and the association goes and manages the property. And right out where I see turkeys and squirrels and woodpeckers and all of these things on the ground out here, they come through on a riding lawnmower and they're spraying what I would assume is Roundup to help with the weeds. Right on top of all of the little things that these squirrels are going and consuming, right? And so it's just like there's been so many examples of ways in which we are living out of connection and out of alignment with our true home and our environment and this earth. So that's kind of where I'm at with feeling grief of this. It's like this anticipatory grief
Mm-hmm.
of understanding that like things are gonna continue to get worse if we don't make some massive changes like yesterday. And also then what do I do in my life now to use this energy and this anger and this grief as fuel to actually see the changes that I want to see in this world? So I'm kind of in this flux of like,
That's
whoa,
big. That's
there's a lot
huge.
coming up for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm just, the and I know you're so passionate and this is, yeah, the anticipatory grief of what the heck? What the hell's going on here and what's it going to be like, 50 years from now? I probably am not going to see 50 years from now, but you will, my grandchildren will, and will we see it, right? What's it going to look like? And I think there are definite efforts, and pockets of areas that are starting to create more sustainability in these farms and indigenous cultures. Like grew up in a town called Shakopee next to Prior Lake, where there's a big Indian reservation, but the Mdewakanton Sioux. And it's interesting because my grandparents' farm, which I spent a lot of time with when I was a little girl, that was my let me just be out on the farm. They actually bought all the land um, surrounding it and they're bringing it all back to nature. And they're, have huge composting facilities and different things. They're bringing buffalo back. So they're actually, because they now have been able to accumulate the wealth through casinos and different things like that, but they're stewards of their heritage and their lineage. And so they're going back and repopulating and not allowing people to come in and continue to destroy it. So I think there's hope. I mean, I feel that there's hope. I'm always the hope person, right? I'm always, the optimist in all of this, that there absolutely is hope. But it goes back to the grieving, which is what we specialize in, is sometimes it feels like there are days like what you're feeling this week, like, oh my God, is there any hope? What can I do? What can I do? What's one thing that how am I going to really impact and affect change? And I say it goes back to getting into figuring out your life purpose. And I think you're getting very clear on the purpose that you're here. So can you just talk a little bit with me and the audience as far as what you got a dream going on that you're stepping into soon, and talk a little bit about what that looks like with the grieving and sustainability and earth, and how you're going to be working to mesh that all together.
Yeah. Yeah, this awareness has really fueled a lot of passion and purpose and mission for me. Um, and I'm making some big changes to step into that. Long-term goal, like big dream in the future, what I really want to do is buy a big piece of land and live on this land with my family and create a community space. So I would love to live with a couple other families and raise our kids together and do all the farming and tend to the land and really make it this beautiful, like local little space where we can take care of ourselves and tend to each other. And to open this up to a community space where there's a little healing center in the woods. Because, of course, like you spoke about with those passages, there is so much healing when we can slow down and spend time with nature. So my grand vision is to open up this space and to bring these healing resources to my community in a woodsy forested setting where you have access to the grief support. You have access to yoga classes and sound healing and farm to table organic nourishing food. You have space to dream and rest and sit around the campfire with loved ones. And beyond that, I'm throwing it out there because I don't know how it's going to happen, but I believe that if I just tell the universe enough times, it'll manifest. Is that I would love to create a space to go die on the land. Because for me, I want my last days to be spent on the earth. I want my body to go back into the soil. I don't want to be cremated. I don't want to be embalmed. I want to be in the earth, naked. Just let me rest. And in my death doula training, we were doing an exercise where we explored this, and I got to thinking, well, where around here in Minnesota can I actually realistically do that? I have no idea legally how that works or whatever to have a green burial. So I thought, well, why not create a space for that? So grand vision, I would love to have like a little cemetery in this healing and dying center in the woods. So that's like how I want to live my life,
Ooh,
and
I
I'm
love
taking
it.
steps towards that. But that feels really big, and I feel really far away from that right now. So I've just been remaining open to like, okay, well, what can I do right now in my life to keep taking steps towards that and to keep practicing this healing work for myself and for my community, and to do it in alignment with this environmental sustainability and taking action with this calling that the earth is really keeps telling me this message again and again, and I my heart needs to take some action to follow that. Otherwise, the more that I have resisted that, the greater I feel anxious and depressed in my way of life. So in my body, I've been really called now to like do this. And this opportunity that presented itself is to participate in a work trade. So basically, I'm going to be speaking with a woman and this property that she has built, and it's a grant ground down in Kentucky. And she's got
Your
all
voice
kinds of
got kind of
homes.
weird. Sorry, I have to cut off. Your voice got a little weird.
Oh,
There we go.
sorry. Can you
That's
hear me?
better. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, my next step is to go be in a community setting with other people who are living full time in their RVs. So I have a tiny home on wheels. It's in a school bus. So I'm deciding to renovate that and make it livable again, move out of my condo here and drive down to Kentucky to build this community space with her. And she's got gardens and chickens and permaculture things where she's growing fruit and all these things on the property. And she's got this beautiful, it's an old tobacco farm. So it's just got a lot of history, and it's got this beautiful Victorian home on the property that she's turned into this little hotel kind of a thing. So to me now, my steps are like learning how to build this grand retreat center in the woods. That is my goal, but doing it by visiting other people's little retreat centers already and learning how they have got there. So that's my next step
That's
to
huge. I mean, that's, talking about life purpose and stepping into it. And when we're working with people who are grieving, we do the mini steps, right? And it's just like, okay, what's maybe the mini step? But when we do like the visioning exercise, oftentimes people have grand visions. It's not uncommon to have a grand vision like yours. And it's like putting it out there because that's not too big. It's not unheard of. I mean, I work with a lot of funeral directors and hang out with them when I do camps and things like that. And the green burials and all of that is really becoming, and I think I would say the generations after me are the ones that are really saying, you know what, we need to do something differently here. And we need to be able to offer up. So I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, it feels really big for me. And just taking these steps to getting out of this way of life that I've built here, which right now consists of living in a condo in a suburb in Woodbury, Minnesota, outside of the Twin Cities. And I have a little patch of some trees outside of my window, but I've been feeling that disconnection. Like every day, I'm like, I don't want to be staring at a screen all day long. I want to be barefoot with my hands in the dirt under the trees growing food and making herbal tinctures and all of these, tending to the pollinator gardens and really just creating this flourishing ecosystem that I can be a part of too. And this way of life in suburbs to me just feels so out of alignment because now I'm going to the grocery store to buy food that came from halfway across the world and is sprayed with a bunch of stuff. And it just feels like every time I participate in this way of life, I feel that calling from my heart and from the earth, like, no, come back. There's more. Like, you want more than this. So I'm finally like, met this woman and this opportunity landed in my lap and I already have the bus that's kind of falling apart. I'm realizing like I want to get back and tend to that because that's the vehicle to really take steps in that direction. So as I've been doing that, I've been feeling a lot of grief with, saying goodbye to people in the cities and not knowing when I'm going to return and not really knowing exactly what this adventure is going to look like and all the things I'm going to learn and the people that I'm going to meet. It's exciting. And at the same time, I'm letting go of a lot right now. And I'm just kind of sitting with this both and in this kind of like transition limbo space of like, wow, like I know I have to do this and I can understand why so many people don't do this because it's hard. And there's a lot of grief that comes with it. And there's a lot of challenges that are coming up for me right now as far as my personal development and my ability to hold space for my own grief process as I grow through this.
Wow. And the both and came to me before you said both and, because it's like you're able to get out there. You can be your barefoot yogi, which was the name of your business, right? And do all of that, but there's still that both and you can still be connected so that, you and I will still be connected. Doesn't matter where you're at because we
Yeah.
have this vision of how we're going to support the grievers and for you to be able to develop a place where people can come and find healing. And I think
Yeah.
I talked about last week, Dr. Matei talks about healing isn't an end game. Healing's up, it's a journey, it's a process. We talk about the grief journey, and journeying and that type of thing, but it really is. It's like healing is an ongoing process as we're learning. And so you finding your footing and going to where you're going to heal your passion in your heart, working on that healing, but also to provide grief spaces
Mhm.
and death and dying spaces. It's like it's all full circle and it's beautiful because it is. We from nature we come, to nature we go back.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think
It
it's
does.
amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that support and the opportunity to talk about it because it feels like I know there are so many people out there that are craving that connection with nature and with themselves and with their spirituality and with this purpose and this mission. but when it comes to actually doing the thing and making changes, it can feel really confusing because we have these systems in place that make it really hard to step outside of those boxes.
Yep.
I mean, I talk to so many people where I'm like, yeah, like I bought a bus and I'm turning it into a schoolie and I'm gonna hit the road and they're, wow, I've always wanted to do that. Well, why don't you? And they just kind of stare back at me like, well, I don't know. It's just like, well, I got a job and stuff, and it's like it's really hard to do. And I think we can doesn't, living sustainably doesn't mean that you have to go live in a bus. I mean, there's ways that living in a bus is not sustainable because it's diesel and whatever. But I think there are lots of things that we can do to take steps closer to like living in more harmony within ourselves and learning how to create those grief spaces, even where we're at now. Even if that means that we're going to create that little corner of our home that feels like that cozy, comfortable space, or go sit with that tree out in the backyard because that feels like the connection that we need. It doesn't need to be in this grand retreat center in the woods. It can be this little space that you've carved out for yourself. So nourishing that and nourishing these connections that we have online and in our grief communities over social media, all those things are still so supportive. And I just see that there's so many other opportunities out there to really continue that journey and that healing process of taking steps closer towards that alignment and that harmony and that connection that we're really searching for at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I'm just thinking of people who are grieving. Many of us, we go through our, passages of grieving at different times and different grief shows up. But just I think about thinking about these plants I got for my mom's funeral, right? So back in January of 21. And some haven't survived, but there's this one that it's like, oh, you're just not looking very well. And so that's my way of nurturing myself and my grief is this week. It's like, okay, I'm going to take you out. We're going to cut you back a little bit. We're going to see where maybe there's a little bit of damage, that needs to be healed and repot, replenish, refeed you so that you can thrive. And as someone who's grieving the death of someone, nature is so important. Like what I was just reading, from Dr. Matei's book, it's like, I recommend that you just go outside. I don't care if you live in New York City. I don't care if you're in downtown Denver, Colorado, where, sometimes we would get clouds of pollution just locked in, over the city, but you can still go outside. You can still find a tree. Trees are amazing. Just like bringing yourself and putting your hands on the trunk of a tree are amazing. It could be just like this morning where we all sat in awe, in absolute awe, from the 2-year-old all the way up to me, the 66-year-old, and everybody in between in this house that just sat mesmerized by the way that these animals were truly coexisting and they weren't fighting. I mean, that coyote could have easily taken down one of the deer, but he knew there were 4 there. He didn't care about the turkeys because he probably doesn't like turkeys. I don't know. All those feathers and stuff is probably messy eating for him. But it's like he just sat hunkered down and he's keeping an eye. But they were all just like, okay, we're going to kind of hang out together here. And we have the woods and the creeks and the systems to sustain that, but they're getting closer and closer to homes. And I hear so many people talk about, oh my gosh, we had one of the neighbors, the coyote came right up on their steps on their camera last night, right up on their front steps. And it's like, well, we've kind of taken their territory. It's kind of like the Mdewakanton Sioux had to take their territory back.
Yeah.
In order to allow it to grow and foster and be here for generations and generations to come, hopefully for centuries and a long time to come. So I don't know where I was going with that, but it's like, it was just so apropos that all this stuff was like occurring when I knew we were going to have this conversation, because I heard it when you sent me the text going, I really want to talk about this. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, creating that space for the connection. You talk about like the land as the space and how there's this kind of a territory with how we share this home with everyone else. And I think that's a big problem that to me was really enlightened this week with that podcast was like we are shoving out these opportunities in these spaces for that natural harmony and these ecosystems to thrive. We are doing things to chemically suppress that process, and we're chopping down these forests and eroding the soil, and now we're going to be paying the price of not being able to feed our children because of that, because we've pushed out all of these natural spaces to profit. And to me that's just heartbreaking that money is more important than our food and our future as a humanity and the earth. So I think like creating those spaces, whether it is just you're tending to your plant that is meaningful for you and represents your connection with your mom from your funeral. That is very much a connection in a sacred space with earth that you're cultivating. Or what about this grand vision of how do we start to reclaim the Amazon that's been cut down and eroded for so many years? That's animals are going extinct every day because we are dismissing the space for the ecosystems to thrive. So I think it's like creating the space for our grief and creating the space for nature and for this connection and for this cohabitation that can happen for all of this to exist at the same time and space. But the challenge is creating the time and space to go put yourself there and to go tend to that, to choose to, take the plant outside and have your little ritual as you clean it up and feed it and repot it. It's so easy to like, oh, it's dead, let's throw it away. Or you can make an opportunity out of it to really cultivate something meaningful for you. And I think that's the missing piece, that we're so caught up in these routines and in the hustle and the grind and all of these ways in which we have these responsibilities, and the systems are set up to keep us kind of distracted from that connection with ourselves and with our grief and with nature and with these things that are actually really important to us that most of us do feel and crave if we had the moment to slow down and to be with it. And I think that's the missing piece, is most of us don't have the opportunity or don't create the opportunity for ourselves to tend to that relationship with ourselves and with our grief and with nature. So that is like part of my mission, is to encourage people to like, yeah, go outside, even if you are in New York City, or even if don't have a tree outside your backyard, there's air, there's, birds everywhere, and to just like find those little opportunities where we can connect. I think that planting those seeds can be really impactful, and then inspires that desire to tend to our earth and to take care of our home and to take care of our bodies and to take care of our relationship with one another.
Yeah.
And for me, with myself, it's been a real big like opportunity to show up for myself in a different way, to say I don't want to live this lifestyle that's stressing me out, making me feel disconnected and depressed in this way of life that I don't want. So in order to best take care of myself and create more time and space for connection with what's really important to me, that means moving. And that means going and putting myself intentionally in a community space where I can go garden. So yeah, I think the hard part is like, okay, well, how do we take those action steps? Whether they're little baby moments of the day that I'm going to stop and breathe and go outside and feel the sun on my skin, or whether it's a large lifestyle shift, like, I really want to become a farmer and regenerate the soil again. So yeah, that's the place I think where I would encourage our listeners to think about like what does that connection mean to you? Like what kind of connection are you craving with yourself and with your grief and with the environment? What is it that your heart's actually really wanting or needing? And what are some tiny little baby steps that you can take to start creating that time and space for that connection, whether it's with your houseplant or whether it's going outside barefoot or going on a trip to a retreat center somewhere.
Because nature is healing. I mean, I was reading, but I've known that my whole life. And you and I've talked about that. Nature is healing. So in order for us to have that capability to heal within nature, yeah, it starts with the small steps, or it's going to be big, like you, with big visions. And, but that doesn't mean that everybody has to have those big visions, but how can they start? And for those of you that are sitting out here listening to this, who are the supporters of those who grieve, gosh, maybe just give them a little plant and see how they do with that, and just to nurture something, because when we start taking care of things outside of ourselves, that's when, to me, the true healing begins. And nature has been around forever, that we all know, and we want to keep it around forever so that generations to come all know, because it really is our healing source, and our indigenous peoples throughout the world know that. I mean, there's so many ceremonies and indigenous being out in and using what comes from the land to help us heal, is just so important. So this was like a profound conversation, but it's funny how it all just like everything, it's the full moon, all the critters are out. You have this on your heart, the grieving that comes and surrounds about all of it, and what can maybe each one of us, maybe that's the takeaway for each one of you, as Cami said, is maybe you walk away from this and jot down one thing that you might be able to do to help in your own healing, where it is stepping into nature physically or mentally from some aspect.
Mhm. Yeah, I really believe that when we can learn how to better show up for ourselves and tend to ourselves, because we're nature too, that reflects outwardly with our relationships and with our connection to
Yep.
the world on a larger, scheme of things. And that really starts with here and now with myself, and my relationship with my grief and how I'm showing up for my body and my well-being. So I think that's really like, if we're going to focus on changing the world, well, that starts from right here. And each and every one of us have that chance and that opportunity to show up for yourself in a better way. And what is one little thing that you could do for yourself today that would help to replenish that connection with yourself and with your community and with the environment?
I love it. Well, thank you, my dear. This has been just like so powerful. So it makes me itching that I want to get outside now,
Me too.
and go hug a tree. My husband laughs about that, but there are such things like us that are tree huggers, that feels pretty
Yes.
good. The energy is good. So we will see you next week. And for everybody else, if you like this episode, please like and hit the subscribe button so that you get our episodes. Let's heal the world one step at a time.
Thank you, Pat.
Bye bye.
Bye.